That brown bottle in your bathroom cabinet, the one you forgot about after your last scraped knee, might be the most underrated tool in your entire garden. Hydrogen peroxide is basically water with one extra oxygen atom, and that tiny difference lets it stop rot, disease, and pests before they ever get a foothold. It's cheap, it breaks down into nothing but water and oxygen, and pros already swear by it. Grab a bottle of the 3% stuff and let's dig in. Number 1. Root rot. Root rot is the silent killer of houseplants and garden beds alike because by the time the leaves wilt, the damage underground is already done. Here's the thing most people miss. Root rot isn't really about too much water. It's about too little oxygen. When soil stays soggy, the air pockets fill up and drown the roots, and that oxygen-starved environment is exactly where the fungi and bacteria that cause rot thrive. This is where hydrogen peroxide is almost perfectly designed for the job. When it hits the soil, it breaks down and releases that extra oxygen atom right into the root zone. That does two things at once. It reoxygenates the suffocating roots, and it destroys the anaerobic pathogens that can't survive in oxygen-rich conditions. In fact, hydrogen peroxide is the active ingredient in commercial products used by professional growers to fight soil diseases like Pythium and Phytophthora, the very organisms behind root rot. To keep it from ever starting, mix about a teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into a cup of water and use it as an occasional drench once your topsoil has dried out. Think of it as insurance for your roots. Number 2. Damping off disease. If you've ever started seeds indoors, you know the heartbreak. Your seedlings sprout, they look perfect for a few days, and then overnight, they flop over at the base like someone pinched the stem shut. That's damping off, and it's caused by fungi and bacteria lurking in the soil and on the seed surface that attack young stems right at the soil line. The frustrating part is that once it hits, there's almost nothing you can do. Those seedlings are gone. So this is a problem you win by preventing, not curing. And that's exactly what hydrogen peroxide is built for. A quick soak of your seeds in a diluted solution sterilizes the outer seed coat, wiping out the fungal spores and bacteria, hitching a ride before they ever get planted. You can also lightly water your seed trays with a weak peroxide solution, about a teaspoon of 3% per cup of water, to knock back pathogens in the potting mix itself. Because peroxide leaves no toxic residue and quickly turns back into water and oxygen, it won't hurt those delicate sprouts. It just clears out the microscopic threats waiting to topple them. Number 3. Weak and patchy germination. Nothing tests a gardener's patience like planting a whole tray of seeds and watching half of them just sit there. Especially with older seeds or ones with tough, hard shells, germination can feel like a coin flip. But hydrogen peroxide can genuinely tilt the odds in your favor, and this one is backed by real science. Seeds need 3 things to wake up: water, warmth, and oxygen. Most people remember the first 2 and completely forget the third. A hydrogen peroxide soak floods the seed with that extra oxygen and gently softens the hard outer coat, a process called chemical scarification, so water and air can finally get inside. The results in the lab are striking. In one published study on edible beans, soaking mung bean seeds in a hydrogen peroxide solution boosted their germination rate by nearly 49%. Other research on sugar beet and various dormant seeds found the same dormancy-breaking effect. To try it, mix about an ounce of 3% hydrogen peroxide into a pint of water and soak your seeds for anywhere from a few hours to overnight, depending on how tough the shell is. Then rinse and plant. You'll often see faster, more even sprouting. Number 4. Fungus gnat infestations. If you've got houseplants, you know these little black flies. One day there's one, the next there's a cloud of them every time you water. Annoying as the adults are, they're not the real problem. The damage is done underground by the larvae, which live in the top couple inches of moist soil and chew on your plant's tender roots. Here's why hydrogen peroxide is the perfect ambush. Those larvae are soft-bodied and shallow, sitting exactly where a soil drench can reach them. When peroxide contacts them, The rapid oxidation destroys their outer membranes almost instantly. That fizzing you see on the soil surface is the reaction killing larvae in real time. Mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 4 parts water. Let your topsoil dry out first, then drench the soil until it runs out the drainage holes. One catch worth being honest about: peroxide kills larvae, but not eggs, and eggs keep hatching every few days. So repeat at each watering for 2 to 3 weeks to break the full life cycle. Do that, and you starve the next generation before it ever takes flight. Number 5. Powdery and downy mildew. That dusty white coating that shows up on squash, cucumbers, roses, and zucchini leaves in late summer isn't dust, it's powdery mildew, a fungal disease that spreads fast and slowly chokes the life out of your plants. Its cousin, downy mildew, does similar damage. Left alone, they can wipe out a harvest. Hydrogen peroxide works here because it's a contact oxidizer. When it lands on fungal spores sitting on a leaf, it ruptures them on contact before they can spread and colonize the rest of the plant. This isn't just backyard folklore either. Hydrogen peroxide is the core ingredient in broad-spectrum fungicides that greenhouse growers rely on to control powdery mildew, botrytis, and more, some of them even certified for organic growing. For prevention, a roughly 1% foliar spray works well. That's about 1 part 3% peroxide to 2 parts water. Spray it on your plants, coating both the tops and undersides of the leaves, ideally in the evening. One important rule: always test a couple of leaves first and wait 24 hours, because too strong a mix can scorch tender foliage. Used correctly, it stops mildew before it ever gets its grip. Number 6. Suffocated roots in compacted soil. We tend to obsess over feeding our plants and forget that roots need to breathe. In heavy clay soil, compacted beds, or pots that have been watered a little too faithfully, the air spaces collapse and the roots slowly suffocate. The plant looks stressed, growth stalls, and you can't figure out why, because the problem is invisible, down at the root zone. Hydrogen peroxide is one of the few things you can pour into that dense, airless soil and actually deliver oxygen directly. As it breaks down, it releases oxygen bubbles that aerate the root zone from the inside, giving struggling roots room to breathe again, while also discouraging the anaerobic microbes that flourish in dead, waterlogged soil. A gentle maintenance drench, about a tablespoon of 3% peroxide per quart of water, used occasionally in place of a regular watering, can keep a heavy or container soil oxygenated and inhospitable to rot. Just don't overdo it. Peroxide is powerful, and constant heavy use can knock out beneficial soil life too, so treat it like an occasional tonic, not an everyday fertilizer. Number 7. Disease and virus spread from dirty tools. Here's a mistake almost every gardener makes without realizing it. You prune a diseased branch, then move to the next plant with the same shears, and you've just personally carried the infection from one plant to another. Pruners, snips, and knives are one of the top ways plant diseases and even plant viruses travel around a garden. Hydrogen peroxide is a fast, effective way to break that chain. As a disinfectant, it kills fungi, bacteria, and viruses on hard surfaces. Professional growers use peroxide-based solutions to sanitize tools, benches, and greenhouse structures specifically to stop disease from spreading. Notably, the commercial versions are even labeled to help control tobacco mosaic virus, one of the most stubborn plant viruses out there. The habit is simple. Keep a spray bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide on your potting bench and spritz or wipe your blades between plants, and definitely before moving from a sick plant to a healthy one. It takes 5 seconds, dries clean, and leaves no residue. That tiny ritual prevents an entire category of problems most gardeners never even connect back to their tools. Number 8. Pathogen carryover in reused pots and trays. Every spring, we grab last year's seed trays, cell packs, and plastic pots out of the shed and get planting. The trouble is, if a plant died of disease in that pot last season, the pathogens can survive on the container all winter, and you're planting fresh seedlings straight into a trap. This is one of the sneakiest sources of mystery plant failures, and hydrogen peroxide shuts it down cleanly because it's a strong oxidizer that kills fungi, bacteria, and lingering spores on hard, non-porous surfaces. A peroxide rinse effectively wipes the slate clean on your pots and trays before you reuse them. Give containers a good scrub to knock off old soil, then soak or spray them with 3% hydrogen peroxide and let them sit a few minutes before rinsing. Seed starting trays especially benefit, since that's where the most vulnerable seedlings will live. Do this before every planting season, and you eliminate a hidden reservoir of disease that would otherwise reinfect each new batch of plants, a problem you never even see coming until it's too late. Number 9. Green algae slime. That slippery green film that creeps across the top of your soil, coats the inside of your pots, glazes over your bird bath, and turns your pavers into a hazard, that's algae. Beyond looking gross, algae on soil can form a crust that blocks water and air from getting down to the roots, and in bird baths and standing water, it just keeps spreading. Hydrogen peroxide is a proven algaecide. In fact, it's one of the main active ingredients in commercial products sold specifically to control algae in greenhouses and water systems. The oxidation reaction breaks algae down on contact without leaving behind a toxic residue that would harm your plants or the birds that visit. For a bird bath, empty it, wipe it down with a diluted peroxide solution, then rinse well before refilling. For algae crusting the surface of your soil or the rim of a pot, a light spray of diluted 3% peroxide clears it and helps reopen the soil surface so it can breathe. Because it disappears into water and oxygen, you're not left with any of the lingering chemicals that other algae killers leave behind. Number 10. Waterborne pathogens in stored water. A lot of gardeners collect rainwater or keep a big barrel or watering can topped up, which is great for the environment and your water bill. But standing water is a breeding ground. Bacteria and waterborne plant pathogens like Pythium can multiply in that stagnant supply, and then you spread them to every plant you water. You think you're nourishing your garden, you might be inoculating it with disease. This is especially critical for anyone running hydroponic or self-watering systems, where the same water constantly recirculates around bare roots. Hydrogen peroxide is widely used to control exactly these water-transmitted pathogens, keeping the water clean and oxygen-rich rather than a soup of microbes. A small amount of 3% peroxide added to stored or recirculating water helps suppress that pathogen buildup while adding dissolved oxygen that roots love. Start conservatively. Roughly a teaspoon or 2 per gallon is plenty for general upkeep, and always err on the side of too little rather than too much. It's a quiet way to make sure the water you're giving your plants is helping them, not seeding the next outbreak. Number 11. Aphids, mealybugs, and soft-bodied pests. Aphids show up out of nowhere, clustering on new growth and multiplying at an alarming rate, and mealybugs leave those telltale cottony patches on stems. Both belong to a group of soft-bodied pests that peroxide can help you handle before they explode into a full infestation. The mechanism is the same one that makes peroxide so good against fungus gnat larvae. Direct oxidation damages their soft bodies on contact. Hydrogen peroxide is actually recognized by the EPA as a minimum risk active ingredient effective against soft-bodied pests like aphids, mealybugs, and whiteflies at around 3% concentration. The key phrase is soft-bodied. It won't do much against armored beetles or caterpillars, so this is a targeted tool, not a cure-all. Spray a 3% solution directly onto the affected leaves, hitting the undersides where pests love to hide, and let it dry without rinsing. Because peroxide has no lasting residue, you'll need to repeat every few days to catch new arrivals, but that persistence is what keeps a handful of aphids from becoming a swarm. As always, test a leaf first so you know your plant tolerates it. Number 12. Fuzzy white mold on the soil surface. You water a houseplant or a seed tray, come back a few days later, and there's a patch of fuzzy white mold spreading across the top of the soil. It usually means the soil is staying too damp with poor airflow, and while a little surface mold isn't always fatal, it's a warning sign, and it can compete with your plant and signal conditions ripe for bigger fungal problems. Hydrogen peroxide clears it fast. As a fungicide, it oxidizes that mold on contact, and the extra oxygen it releases helps correct the airless, overly wet conditions that let the mold grow in the first place. So you're treating the cause, not just the symptom. Lightly spray the affected soil surface with a diluted 3% solution, and you'll usually see the mold fizzle away. Then adjust your habits. Let the top of the soil dry out more between waterings and improve air circulation. The peroxide handles the immediate problem, and the change in conditions keeps it from coming back. It's a 2-minute fix for something that quietly bothers a huge number of indoor gardeners. Number 13, bacterial slime clogging drip lines and watering cans. If you use drip irrigation, soaker hoses, or self-watering planters, there's a problem building up where you can't see it. The insides of those lines slowly develop a slimy bacterial biofilm, that gunky layer that coats the tubing, and over time it clogs emitters, restricts flow, and harbors pathogens that then get delivered straight to your plant's roots. This is the kind of maintenance headache that sneaks up on you. Plants at the end of a line start underperforming, emitters drip unevenly, and you assume the system's just old. Often, it's biofilm. Hydrogen peroxide is excellent at breaking down that slimy buildup because it oxidizes the organic film that other rinses just slide over. The same reason it's used to keep watering and irrigation systems clean in commercial growing. Periodically running a diluted peroxide solution through your drip system or soaking watering cans and reservoirs with it clears the biofilm and sanitizes the whole path your water travels. Rinse afterward, and your irrigation runs cleaner and more evenly, and you've quietly removed a hidden root that disease uses to reach every plant you own. Number 14, bulb, corm, and tuber rot. Anyone who plants tulips, dahlias, garlic, or gladiolus knows the letdown of pulling a bulb out of storage, or worse, out of the ground months later, only to find it's gone soft and rotten. Bulbs, corms, and tubers are dense with stored energy, which makes them a prime target for the fungi and bacteria that cause rot, both in storage and in the soil after planting. Just like it sterilizes seeds, hydrogen peroxide can disinfect the outside of bulbs and tubers, killing the surface pathogens that would otherwise cause them to rot from the outside in. It's a simple pre-planting insurance step that a lot of gardeners have never even heard of. Before planting or storing, give bulbs a brief soak in a diluted 3% peroxide solution, then let them dry. The peroxide clears off fungal spores and bacteria clinging to the surface, and because it breaks down completely, there's nothing left to harm the bulb. It's a small, cheap habit that can be the difference between a jar of healthy bulbs in spring and a bag of mush, a problem solved before it ever begins. Number 15, bacteria fouling cut flower water. Here's a bonus one for anyone who grows flowers and brings them indoors. You cut a gorgeous bouquet, put it in a vase, and within a couple of days the water turns cloudy, the stems get slimy, and the flowers droop long before they should. The number one enemy of cut flowers isn't age, it's bacteria multiplying in the vase water and clogging the stems so they can't drink. A small amount of hydrogen peroxide keeps that vase water clean by suppressing the bacteria before they can build up and block the stems. Florists have quietly used this trick for years, adding just a bit to keep blooms fresher, longer. The key word is small. Add only about a half teaspoon of 3% peroxide per quart of water because too much can actually stress the flowers rather than help them. Refresh the water every couple of days, re-snip the stems, and add a little peroxide each time. It's a tiny effort that can genuinely extend how long your homegrown bouquet stays beautiful on the table. So before you reach for another expensive bottle of garden chemicals, remember that a dollar jug of hydrogen peroxide can quietly prevent half the problems that wreck a garden. Start gentle, always test first, and use it like a medicine rather than an everyday feed. Try a few of these and watch how much healthier everything grows. Thanks for watching. If this helped, give it a like and subscribe. It's the best way to keep these videos coming.